My name is Barbara Griffin. I'm 36. I wish I could say I didn't see it coming, that there were no warning signs, that the moment everything snapped was some rare, unpredictable explosion in an otherwise peaceful history. But that wouldn't be the truth. The truth is simpler, quieter, and far more humiliating. I saw the red flags. I walked past every single one of them, holding my son's hand, telling myself again and again, "It's just dinner, Barbara. One dinner. For him." My son had been buzzing about seeing his cousins for days. He'd packed his little backpack twice, adding crayons, then removing them, then adding a toy spaceship in case Ava wants to play. He still believed kids apologize, that adults fix things, that family means something other than leverage and guilt. I pulled into my parents' driveway that night with a pit in my stomach, but I swallowed it down. For him, I always did. The front door was already open when we walked up. My mother was arranging silverware like she was hosting a gala instead of a simple family dinner. She didn't greet me. She didn't look at me. She only said, "Shoes off," as if I were some neighbor tracking dirt through her house. Then I saw the table, place cards, for family dinner. My mother's handwriting swirling beautifully across each one, like she'd spent all afternoon practicing curves for a royal banquet. My son's name and mine were way down at the far end, practically in the hallway, while everyone else was clustered tightly near the head of the table. Ava, my brother Jason's daughter, sat directly beside my father in the honorary spot, swinging her legs and smiling like she owned the room. Jason looked up at me and offered a tired half smile, the kind parents who are always apologizing with their eyes give. Danielle was next to him, his ex-girlfriend, Ava's mother. She barely glanced up from her phone. She used to pretend to like me. Now she didn't bother. I tried to ignore the distance between seats. I tried to focus on my son's excitement as he rattled off stories about school, his new science kit, the volcano he was building. He spoke fast when he was nervous or happy. Tonight he was both. I cut into his chicken, smiling at how he narrated every move on his plate when the entire room went cold. Ava looked straight at him, face blank, then announced loudly, clearly, "We don't sit with people like you." Silence. Half a second of thick, suffocating quiet. Then, Danielle snorted and tried, and failed, to hide her laugh behind her fingers. My father chuckled like it was an inside joke. My mother didn't even flinch. She just sipped her wine, reached for the butter dish, and hummed a tune. My son froze. I froze. Even Jason blinked like he couldn't quite process what he'd heard. I forced my voice to stay steady. "Ava, sweetheart, what do you mean?" She smiled. The sly kind of smile kids learn from adults who teach them cruelty behind closed doors. "Grandma says you act like you're better than us because you make money. That's why we don't sit with you people." "You people!" My father didn't correct her. My mother didn't even look up. Danielle let out a small laugh. "Kids say the funniest things, don't they?" No one else said a word. I felt something in me go very, very still. Quiet, like a snapped wire. I packed my son's backpack with shaking hands. He didn't argue. He didn't ask why. He just reached for my sleeve with small, trembling fingers. I didn't say goodbye. Not to my parents, not to Jason, not to Danielle. I walked out the door, buckled my son into the car, and drove away in a silence so heavy it felt like a weight pressing against my lungs. That night, as I tucked my son into bed, I kept picturing that smile Ava gave, the one that said she already understood the hierarchy, who mattered, who didn't, and where her grandmother stood in that teaching. My phone buzzed just as I stepped out of his room. From Dad. "You're sending the money tomorrow, right?" The mortgage. The mortgage they refinanced to buy a cruise and a new truck. The mortgage I'd been secretly paying for 3 years because they begged and cried and promised it was temporary. I stared at the screen for a long moment, then typed the first honest thing I'd said to them in years. Not a chance. I barely slept. I kept replaying everything in my mind. The way Ava's voice didn't waver. The way the adults around her laughed. The expression on my son's face when he looked up at me like he had somehow done something wrong. At 7 a.m. the next morning, another message came, this time from my mother. "We were only joking. Don't be dramatic. You're still helping us this month, right? The cruise is in 2 weeks. Joking." There was no apology, no concern for my son, no acknowledgement of what happened. Just entitlement. And demands. I didn't reply. Instead, I pulled up their cruise booking. Alaskan glaciers, balcony suite, first class. They hadn't paid a cent. Canceling it took less than 60 seconds. Thousands of dollars refunded instantly to my card. I felt nothing. No guilt, no hesitation, just clarity. Next, I logged into the bank and shut off their mortgage auto pay. The same mortgage I'd been covering through every tantrum, every guilt trip, every manipulation. No warning, no explanation, just a clean cut. Then I waited. Day 1, silence. Day 2, missed calls. Day 3, voicemails. Mom, cheerful at first. Hey, honey, weird issue with the cruise line. They say the reservation is gone. Can you check? We still need to pick our excursions. Excursions, as if everything was fine. Dad, annoyed. They said the booking was canceled. This better not be you punishing us. We already booked flights. Not one mention of Ava's words. Not one mention of my son's pain. Not 1 ounce of remorse. By day 5, Mom was screaming into the voicemail. We told all our friends about this trip. You embarrassed us. We need that vacation. I sent one message back. You didn't pay for it. I did, and I changed my mind. Just like you changed yours about who's worth sitting with. Then I muted their numbers. That night, Jason texted me. What happened now? I stared at the screen for a long moment. He had no idea. None of them did. But they were all about to find out. Jason's text sat on my screen like a knot I wasn't ready to untangle. What happened now? It was the same question he always asked whenever my parents erupted over something small. My mother's missing Tupperware, my father's forgotten tool set, a bill they assumed someone else would magically cover. But this time, it wasn't a small thing. This time, a child had looked at my son and told him he didn't belong. And the adults had laughed. I called him. Jason picked up on the first ring. I could hear kitchen noise in the background, running water, Ava's shoes tapping lightly against tile, Danielle's voice drifting in from another room. For a moment, I wondered if he'd put me on speaker. What happened? Jason asked again, voice low, tired, already expecting the worst. So I told him. Everything. I told him about the place cards, about my son's confusion, about Ava's words, the laughter, the silence from the people who should have known better. I told him how my mother didn't even blink, how my father chuckled, how Danielle covered her mouth like the whole thing was comical. I didn't mention the part where my heart cracked, because that wasn't the point. The point was my son, and what they'd allowed him to hear. Jason didn't react at first. There was just this long, heavy pause on the line. Then he said quietly, I should have spoken up. You didn't say it, I replied, but you didn't correct her either. He exhaled shakily. Danielle's been saying things, to Ava. I stayed still, completely silent. He continued. Stuff like that you only show up when it's convenient, that you act like you're better than everyone, that you use money to control people. A beat. Mom repeats that last part a lot. My stomach twisted. So Ava didn't get it from nowhere, I murmured. No, she didn't. Something inside me tightened. Anger, grief, maybe both. It was easier to believe Ava had just repeated something careless she overheard. It was harder to accept she'd been taught those words on purpose. Jason hesitated before saying, Danielle's been worse lately. She thinks the cruise falling apart is your fault. She said my parents are suffering and that if I stood up to you, you'd fold. That stung more than I expected. But I kept my voice steady. I'm not done, Jason. What does that mean? It means your daughter should hear the truth before she forgets how to think for herself. He didn't press. He didn't defend Danielle. He just said, okay, and hung up. For the next week, the world went quiet in a way I hadn't felt in years. No texts from my parents, no guilt trips, no emergency calls demanding money. Just me and my son, breakfast pancakes, school drop-offs, and silence. Freedom. I'd forgotten what that felt like. On the 8th day, my phone buzzed again. Jason. They're trying to drag me into it, he said without preamble. Your mom called my office pretending there was a family emergency. My eyebrows shot up. What kind of emergency? She said the cruise flights couldn't be refunded. She started crying. Said they'd told the entire church community and now everyone's laughing at them. Then she complained about the mortgage, said they're behind and the bank will take the house. My jaw clenched. They've been behind for years. That shouldn't surprise them. She made it sound like you ruined their lives. They ruined their own lives, I said sharply. I just stopped cushioning the fall. There was another quiet pause, thicker this time. Jason cleared his throat. You didn't tell me about the credit cards. My heart hammered. What do you mean? You've been paying them, minimum payments, for months. His voice wasn't angry. It was hurt. I closed my eyes. I didn't want them destroying their credit through sheer irresponsibility. They used my email for the bills. I didn't know how to stop it. Jason didn't speak right away. When he finally did, it was soft. You have to tell them you're done. All the way done. Not just stop paying. Say it. He was right. So I did. I opened the family group chat, the same one they used for birthday greetings, holiday plans, and photos of Ava's spelling bee trophies, and typed, "Effective immediately, I will no longer provide financial assistance of any kind. All current and future payments are canceled. Do not contact me for money or explanations. You have made it clear how you see me and my son. Now you can manage without us." The replies came instantly. "Mom, how dare you embarrass us like this? We've told everyone what you've done. You'll regret this." "Dad, I always knew you'd turn your back on us eventually. We hoped you'd outgrow being spiteful." "Danielle, unbelievable. You're punishing innocent people because a child made a mistake. Grow up, Barbara." I muted the chat. A few hours later, my phone rang again. "Jason." "She's asking questions," he said immediately. "Who?" "Ava. She overheard Danielle saying you think you're better than everyone. She asked if it was true." "And what did you tell her?" "I told her no. I told her you're the only one who ever helped this family, that you love her, that none of this is your fault." Something inside me loosened. A knot I'd been carrying for years unraveled a fraction. "And Danielle?" I asked quietly. "Lost it," he said. "She said I'm gaslighting her. She accused you of turning me against her. She said she'll go straight to my parents and fix it herself." "What did you say?" Jason's voice hardened into something I'd never heard from him. "I told her not to bother. If she wants to take their side, she can. But I'm done being their buffer. You're not the problem, Barbara. They are. And I'm not dragging Ava down with them." My breath caught. For the first time, he had taken a side. And it was mine. A strange, trembling peace settled over me. The collapse was coming. I could feel it like a storm front pressing against the air. But for once in my life, I wasn't standing under the wreckage waiting to be crushed. I was watching from the outside. Then Monday came, and the storm dropped right into my lap. I was in a budget review meeting at work when my phone buzzed. Twice. One call from the school office. One from an unknown number. A number that turned out to be the counselor's direct line. Her voice was calm, measured. "Barbara, your son asked to talk to me. He said he was upset and wanted to speak privately about some family stuff." 2 words lingered in my head like a warning bell. Family stuff. I left work immediately. The meeting didn't matter. None of it did. When I walked into the counselor's office, my son was sitting on the floor, legs crossed, flipping pages in a book he wasn't really reading. He looked up when he saw me. "Mom," he whispered, "Ava's mad." My heart tightened. "What did she say?" He hesitated, then leaned in. "She said, 'It's our fault Grandma cries now, and that you stole from them. That's why they're poor now.'" It hit me like a brick to the chest. I didn't let him see it. I took him home, made him lunch, let him rest. That evening, I called Jason. He went silent as I explained, dead silent. Then he said the last thing I expected. "I'm separating from her." I thought I misheard, but he repeated it. "She's been poisoning Ava for years," he said. "I'm done. I already spoke to a lawyer." I sank onto the kitchen stool, gripping the edge of the counter. "And there's something else," he added. My stomach dropped. "Danielle and your mother, they've been talking, a lot, every day, complaining about you, about how I'm not handling you." He took a shaky breath. "And today, they asked me to take your son for a weekend, so he can be with real family, without you." My blood ran cold. Jason's voice cracked. "I told them no. I told them I was done letting them use me to hurt you." I didn't feel triumphant. I felt something else, something deeper. Relief, sadness, fear for the ripple effect, gratitude that I wasn't alone, but mostly a sinking certainty. This wasn't over. Not even close. Jason's revelation sat in my chest like a stone I couldn't swallow. My mother, Danielle, working together, bonded through mutual resentment of me. It should have surprised me, but it didn't. Manipulators recognize each other by scent. They survive on shared grievances, whispered alliances, and the thrill of targeting someone who refuses to bend. I didn't sleep that night, not because I feared what came next, but because I finally understood the scale of what I was up against. This wasn't family conflict. This was a coordinated campaign. And the battleground wasn't money anymore. It was my son, my reputation, my place in their hierarchy, which I'd just burned to the ground. The next morning, the fallout arrived. Not through a call, not through a text, but through my cousin Melissa. She forwarded me a family-wide email my mother had sent at dawn. Subject line, "A serious situation." I opened it with shaking hands. And there it was, 5 paragraphs of manufactured chaos. Claims that I had stolen money from them, that I'd canceled their trip out of spite, that I was turning Ava against her mother, that I'd financially manipulated the family for years. Fake screenshots, poorly edited, I might add, of messages I supposedly sent. At the bottom, Melissa wrote, "She sounds unstable, Barb. I don't believe a word of this. If you need help explaining your side to the family, I'm here." I exhaled slowly. Melissa had always been the only sensible one. But I didn't respond. And for good reason. Because just a few hours later, my phone lit up again. Jason. He didn't say hello. He didn't ease into it. He just sighed, long and exhausted, and said, "I told Danielle I want full custody." I sank onto the couch. How did she react? "How do you think?" he replied, voice heavy. "She said I've been brainwashed, that you're poisoning me, that I'm tearing the family apart." I swallowed. "And what did you say?" "That I simply started paying attention." He paused for a moment, quieter now. "I always thought the problem was between you and them," he said. "But it's the same with Danielle. The same patterns, the same manipulation, the same rewriting of reality." He sounded older, worn, like a man who'd finally stopped treading water and realized how far he'd been dragged out to sea. "Barbara," he continued, "I think maybe I let it happen. Maybe I didn't want to see how they treat you, or Ava, or me." "People normalize what they grow up with," I said softly. "You're doing the right thing now." "Yeah," his voice cracked, "but it's about to get worse." I braced myself. "She's dragging Ava into the arguments," he said, "telling her you're tearing the family apart, telling her that if I really cared, I'd stand up to you." My throat tightened. "Jason!" It was a cruel, ugly thing to weaponize a child with adult lies, but Danielle had no limits. None. And now that she felt threatened, she was doubling down. He inhaled sharply. "But there's something bigger," he said. I gripped the phone. "She's calling lenders, banks, trying to get someone, anyone, to confirm something she can use against me." A chill ran through me. "She's trying to prove I'm financially unstable," he said, "to fight the custody claim." Of course she was. People like Danielle only stop escalating when they run out of targets, or when someone finally blocks their path. And I was the path she wanted clear. That afternoon, I checked my phone and found an alert from my bank. "Fraud attempt detected." Someone tried logging in using an old password. An old password I hadn't used in years. A password I'd once shared with my parents. I didn't hesitate. I locked every account, changed every login, updated every two-factor verification. Then I received an email from the cruise line. "Your mother attempted to reactivate the canceled itinerary using your confirmation number." Of course she did. The next day, a letter arrived. 5 full pages of my mother's handwriting. Tight, slanted, furious. She listed everything I owed them. Attached printouts of cruise plans, circled Facebook comments from relatives, wrote paragraphs about my responsibility as a daughter. The last page ended with, "You were supposed to take care of us. That's what good daughters do." I didn't bother finishing it. I had learned long ago that nothing I said would matter. One thing abusers share is this unshakable belief. You owe them your silence and your service. And when you take either away, they fall apart. Later that evening, my phone rang again. "Jason." This time his voice wasn't tired. It was furious. "Barbara," he said sharply. "Something's happened." My stomach clenched. "What is it?" "I got a notice today, from the mortgage lender." I went still. "My parents' mortgage?" I asked slowly. "No." He sucked in a breath. "Not theirs." A pause. "Yours." My blood turned to ice. "What about my mortgage?" I whispered. He swallowed. "Someone added me as a co-signer." My world stopped. "What?" I breathed. "I didn't authorize it. I didn't sign anything. But the lender said the request was submitted with your mother's number listed as the secondary contact." I felt like the ground tilted beneath me. My mother, Danielle, working together, trying to bind Jason financially to me, trying to force his involvement, trying to create leverage for custody battles, trying to pull him deeper into the web I'd just cut. He exhaled, voice shaking with fury. "They used my information, Barbara, without my consent. They forged something. They crossed a line." I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Because this wasn't manipulation anymore. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't emotional leverage. It wasn't family dysfunction. This was criminal. Jason's voice broke through the ringing in my ears. "This is it," he said. "I'm done. I'm calling my lawyer now. And when this goes to court, they're not going to hide behind family anymore." He paused. "They wanted a war," he whispered. "Now they're going to get one." And just like that, everything shattered.